Right now, Mo Farah is probably about halfway round the London Marathon. I think it started at 10. Either that or is about to just set off. There are 36,000 people who are going to be pounding the streets of London, who are pounding the streets of London right at this moment. And a great deal of them by now will be wishing that they'd perhaps stayed in bed. And 2 years ago, I was one of those people, running a marathon that is, not wishing I'd stayed in bed. To train properly for a marathon, you've got to consider all kinds of things. And we have all kinds of magazines that tell us what we need to do, how to boost our running IQ, upgrade your marathon. We've got to choose the right kind of shoes. Beginner's Guide to Running Shoes. Master the Marathon. 8 pairs of minimal shoes. Socks. You wouldn't think how important socks are, but if you don't want your feet to blister, you've got to wear the right socks. You've got to train your body how to breathe properly in rhythm with your feet. You've got to go on long distance runs to build up endurance. You've got to do shorter distance runs to develop stamina. You've got to learn about the right kinds of food that you need to eat, not just to lose weight, though in my experience that helps, but also the right kinds of foods that will deliver the energy to your muscles as you run at the right time, and the right kind of food to eat that will help to rebuild your muscles after you've run. You have to think about the kinds of fluids that you're going to take on board whilst you run, not just water, but whether you're going to have Gatorade or Lucasade or flat Coca-Cola, whether jelly beans are better than jelly babies whilst you're running. All of these things you've got to think about and try and do, and you practice these things for at least 4 months whilst you're training. But there's one thing that you can't really train for. I just need to get my flicker. There's one thing that you can't really train for when you're training for a marathon, and that is the mental strength, the focus, the determination that you need to complete those 26.2 miles. You see, when you run a marathon, when you're training for a marathon, you run 20 miles at most in your training. But then there's still another 6.2 miles that you've got to finish. And people will say to you, and those of you who are runners, and I can see there are many of you who are runners here, those of you who are runners, people will tell you that, well, that last 6.2 miles, it's just a short 10 kilometres. And that's true. But it is the most difficult, the hardest, the most grueling 10 kilometres that you'll ever do in your entire life. And so it's crucial that you have that mental strength, that focus to get you through, especially if you've been running for 3, 4 or 5 hours. Most people who run a marathon, those who are running today, will be running for some kind of cause or in memory of someone that they loved, or a cause that's very close to their heart. And I have a virtual friend. I've got real friends as well, but I have a virtual friend on Facebook who ran the Brighton Marathon, which actually ran last week. And it took him over 6 hours to get round. Now, even for a beginner, 6 hours is a long time to run a marathon. But you see, Darren, as you can see from the photograph, was running in full combat gear, and he was carrying a 30-pound backpack on his back. You see, Darren's a soldier, and he had served in Afghanistan. And whilst Darren was serving there, his friend Kit, was killed when a suicide bomber drove a car packed full of explosives into his convoy and detonated it. Darren and Kit were on peacekeeping duties, and Kit was just 23 years old. What got Darren round the Brighton Marathon last week over those 6 gruelling hours in full combat gear with a 30-pound pack on his back was focusing on the memory of his friend, a friend who had died serving others. And it will be focusing on the memory of Kit that will enable Darren to complete the 529 miles that he set himself to run this year. That's 23 miles for every 23 years of Kit's life. This morning, we're continuing our look at core beliefs, and I want to explore with you what it means for Christ to be first in our lives.